Hello, this is Debbie Collins, and before you get started on your first assignment in HTML, I want to go over some good practices that I'd like to see you follow. I also plan on showing you how to use Notepad++ to start with your first HTML page. First of all, I want you to take a look at the HTML source code for two different pages. Well, these are two different source codes. And I want you to notice the readability of each of these. Next, let's take a look at this actual file. And this file, Starbuzz Beverages, in a heading element, and then this is in a definition list. Okay, and let's take a look at this one. It is actually the exact same thing. These two source code files are exactly the same. I would like you, however, to use what's called white space. White space in your source code is going to help with the readability of your source code. You will be creating your first assignment, and in follow-up assignments, I expect you to use the same source code file, modifying it and making improvements. So let me talk about what's being done here. HTML elements, also known as tags, have a hierarchy. One tag can be nested inside of another tag. So in both of these examples, there are tags nested inside of each tag. The HTML tag, which has all of the other elements nested inside of it, is to the left. The head tag and the body tag are indented inside the HTML tag. In addition, the elements that are nested inside the head are then indented. So if I needed to quickly see where the style element ends, because many elements come in pairs, I can take a look down and there it is. Where's the body end? There it is. Okay, let's try that here. Well, here's style, and where's the style end? There it is over here. Secondly, I want you to notice in the source code that these HTML elements are in lowercase. I would like you to follow that practice. Next, I mentioned it briefly, but elements come in pairs. Not all elements come in pairs, but many elements comes in pairs. So make sure that you close elements that do come in pairs. So notice the opening element will be inside of angle brackets. The closing element's exactly the same, but we'll have a slash in front of it. So everything inside of this is nested inside of there. Next, I want to mention that tags must be nested properly. So let's take a look at this one. This is implying that the I element, which italicizes, is nested in the bold element. But if it were, then the I element has to close before the bold element. So this is not proper. It should be opening B, opening I, closing B. So there are some required HTML tags, and we're going to take a look at that when we look at the template. Finally, I would like you to follow this good practice of adding comments. Comments are hidden from the viewer, but can be read by anyone reading the source code. So I would like you to use what I'm going to call author comments. Comments in HTML begin with an angle bracket immediately followed by an exclamation mark dash dash. And it closes with a dash dash angle bracket. Anything that you put inside of there is considered a comment. So notice the comment I want you to include is author, your name, date, a date, and then the assignment number. Section 2.3 of our text is titled Web Page Template, and that is because every web page has a set of required elements you need no matter what that web page is going to look like. So the author has given us a template file for you to start with. It's in your Chapter 2 folder of your student files, template.html. But let's take a look at what that file would contain. First of all, it contains the doc type. So there is actually many versions of HTML, and the doc type is not an element, even though it is in angle brackets. The doc type indicates what version of HTML you are using. And the most current version, you simply have to write doc type HTML, such as this. The remainder of the elements in the template is the HTML. So what you could do is you could get started by just simply copying and pasting this into Notepad++, since I have the ebook. You could also locate your student files, go into Chapter 2, and here's your template here. Now what I want you to notice is it doesn't say template.html. It is there, but if you're in Windows, for some reason Microsoft decided you do not need to see what the file extension is. This is very important to know, however. It's easy to save it with a TXT extension because Notepad will do that by default. You could take a look over here, and Chrome is my default browser, so under type it says chrome.html file. But as a hint, if you go to View, I'm in Windows Explorer, and if you go to View and click on File Name Extensions, check that, you will see now, I see it is .html. I would always do that. As a developer, I want to see the extensions. I know what they mean. If you have Notepad++ installed, you can right mouse click on the file name, and you will see that you can come up to Edit with Notepad++. This will open up Notepad++, and there is the file. There is a problem with this file since I am going to require that you indent it. So I'm going to highlight and indent. These two elements, indent, and I'll resave that. So now I have a template which is indented as I have requested you to do in the good practices. I'm going to go ahead and highlight this and start a new page. So what if instead of starting from the template, you decide to start with a new page? You want to make sure that you come up and that you set the settings for the file under language to HTML. Here's something I want you to notice. If I click on head, I click on body. If you tell Notepad++ this is an HTML page, and there's many other types of pages as you see that this could be, but by telling Notepad++, it's going to highlight the ending tag for you. It's going to help you a lot. Make sure that you change the title of the page. So if this is for Java Jam, for example, make sure that the title is correct. Let's go ahead and see how some of these elements close automatically. So a lot of times, your first element nested in a body might be what's called an H1 element. Notice how nice this is. It's coming up with a list of all of the elements that begin with an H. And when I added this angle bracket, it automatically added the closing tag. So no longer are you going to forget to put in the closing tag. This is my first web page. Let's go ahead and save that. So I'm going to save it in my documents as first page. And how do I preview this? Well, one thing I could do is, I know I saved it in documents. I could come to documents and find it, and then I could open it up by double clicking. Another option is within Notepad++, don't even have to go to the File Explorer. You can go to Run, and notice you can launch it in many different browsers. So if I want to see what it's going to look like in Firefox, and there it is. It's rendering in Firefox. Go ahead and see if it looks similar to Internet Explorer. And there it is in Internet Explorer. So you can test it actually very easily in multiple browsers. You may have read from last week when I was talking about the software for web developers, that web developers normally have a lot of browsers installed because a web page may look differently depending on what browser it is rendering in. The word rendering means taking the source code and figuring out what the look is going to be based on that source code. And you would think it would look the same in every browser, but it does not. A good web developer will test it in many browsers. Section 2.18 of your text talks about HTML validation. HTML can be invalid. That elements must be nested correctly. If they're not, they will be invalid. The W3C, which we talked about last week, has a markup validation service at this web page. I would like you to copy and paste your source code into the validator to make sure that your HTML is valid. In fact, I copy and paste all of your source code as I'm grading because the computer can look at it faster than I can. So I'm going to create an error on this page to show you what happened. As I mentioned previously, you must have a closing tag. So I'm going to make a B, but I'm going to forget to close it. And then I'm going to make an I, and I'm not going to close that properly. You see, it's hard to make that mistake in Notepad++ because they do close those tags for you. Okay, so I don't have the closing bold here. Okay, notice I have an opening I, an opening span, but I closed the I, whereas I should have closed the span first. Okay, I'm going to highlight all of my source code, and I'm going to copy it. And I am here at this validator website, and you have 3 tabs here. I like to go to direct input and simply paste my source code right in here. This is exactly what I just had, and then click the check button. And you will see that the validator is letting me know there's a problem with it. In fact, it says it violates the nesting rules. So I know, I'm going to have to move this over. Okay, and then the span is the same error. And it says, wait a minute, you've closed the body, but there's not a closing bold. And that's going to happen in line 9. I think I'll leave that not corrected yet, and I'll check again. And notice I'm down to 2 errors, okay? And I'll correct. I know what the error is, and I'll check again. And then finally it gives me a message. Hey, this is valid. So if you would go through that, I'm going to do that for the web pages you submit. So I suggest before you submit your web pages that you do that. And then you're going to be submitting a perfect page. And that wraps up what you need to get started on your first web page assignment.